Welcome in once again to the most accurate podcast here at 444 Fantasy Football. I am Matt Okada. I have with me, as always, fortunately for myself and all of you, John Paulson. We are coming off a Thursday night football game that delivered. In fact, I don't even know if you can say delivered because nobody ordered as good of a game as we got. But it was pretty fun. John, did you get to watch it? Did you enjoy it? And how are you doing in general?
I did watch it as a very interested observer since I took the Rams in one of my two survivor pools, thinking that at home that they would be able to beat a team that is missing its starting quarterback, its two starting receivers, and starting tight end on a short week. So it's a gray morning here in Southern California. I'm feeling a little gray. So I'm wearing my gray 444 t-shirt, lamenting the loss because I am fully planning on winning this Splash Sports $500,000 444 pool. I guess I'm allowed to play in it, so I'm gonna win it. I got one entry left, and all I can say is that the Cardinals better not lose this week.
Oh boy, all the hopes riding on the Cardinals is never something you want, but they do have a good matchup.
Yes.
Everybody who we would have liked to perform well for fantasy performed well for fantasy, so we honestly don't have to get into this game that much. Stafford was incredible. His receivers that we care about were incredible. Kyren Williams was incredible. On the 49ers side of the ball, it was a lot more surprising, but still very encouraging. Obviously, Christian McCaffrey was great. He looks like he's going to be the most consistent with some of the most upside that any running back is in fantasy all year, as long as he stays healthy, which might be a miracle with whatever is going on in the Bay Water because everybody else is hurt. But it didn't matter because, good heavens, Mac Jones, 342 yards and 2 touchdowns on 33 completions. Kendrick Bourne, 10 catches for 142 yards. This was mind-boggling. I think there's only two real questions to ask. One is barely even a question. It's more just a note, which is that operating this offense, Mac Jones is just as good as Brock Purdy, 90% of Brock Purdy. Like, is he even a downgrade at all for the fantasy assets for as many games as he has to start?
Not really. I mean, we've seen this before though with Kyle Shanahan. And he's like, I don't like Kyle Shanahan because he's a San Francisco 49ers coach, but I have a lot of respect for him because it was a masterpiece in terms of getting this offense ready to go, having Mac Jones ready to go, having his backup quarterbacks ready to go every time they come in, Sam Darnold, whoever it is throughout the years. Just cast-offs from other teams that disappointed early in their careers, and they come in and just light it up for him and his team and his offense. And it's just astounding, I would say, that they had this much success. It really wasn't a road game, I guess, when you think about the Rams' home crowds in general, and how well the 49ers traveled to this one, especially. So kind of a neutral field, and the 49ers really took advantage. There's a few things I wanted to touch on as Kyren Williams was very good fantasy wise, but that fumble at the goal line, not so good. As I mentioned earlier, really heartbreaking for my survivor pool. I will say I am going to go bright side on that and say at least I didn't put the Rams in both because I almost did. Like I almost was so confident that the Rams were going to win due to the injuries. So I kept one with the Cardinals. Kendrick Bourne, and Jake Tongas. I wrote them both up in sneaky starts. I didn't do a full long write up on Kendrick Bourne. I kind of wish I had. I did sort of feel like a good game was coming. I was not expecting 10 for 142 on 11 targets. But Kendrick Bourne is one of these guys, and he did it in San Francisco before, and he did it in New England here and there. When he's getting the run, he typically produces, and for some reason, teams just have not locked him up as their number 2 receiver because he's fully capable of being a number 2. He'd be a great number 3, and he's just kind of a cast off that the Patriots didn't even want this year. They chose multiple guys over him, which is kind of crazy when you think about how well he played last night. Tongas, I had to start him in the aforementioned Connor Allen FFPC main event team where we are down Kittle, and we were sitting there looking at him and Gadsden, and we're like, well, let's go with Tongas because they're so beat up. He's got to get some targets, and he got 11 targets, 7 for 41 and a touchdown. We got 20 points out of him. Outscored Devontae Adams. So if you're facing Devontae Adams with Jake Tongas, you're feeling pretty good about things right now. McCaffrey just rolling.
Yep.
Injury concerns right now with him. He feels like somebody that could go down at any time, but right now you got to love the 30 touches, right?
Yeah, and the big thing with McCaffrey is the run game has not been great. It's actually been pretty bad. In this game, he averaged 2.6 yards a carry, still got 22 carries, which is, in my opinion, very encouraging because they're not just dumping the run game because he's not being super efficient or the run game can't be super efficient. But far more importantly, if you just took his receiving production this year, he'd still be a good running back. 8 catches for 82 yards and a touchdown on 9 targets in this game. And he's been obviously with nobody there to catch passes except for the aforementioned out of nowhere Kendrick Bourne and Jake Tongas. He's going to get these targets. The main question here is obviously Bourne is a highlight, but the question is, with everybody banged up, how high of a priority waiver ad is he, given the reality that when Ricky Pearsall comes back and Juwan Jennings comes back and eventually Brandon Ayuk probably comes back and George Kittle comes back, he probably goes back to doing nothing, I would assume. Is he?
Yeah, I mean,
get him if you can.
You felt like Pearsall and Jennings were probably going to be out this week because it was a short week. But how severe are their injuries, and how long are they out? Because that really determines whether or not Bourne gets any snaps. And if the two of them are both healthy, Kittle supposedly is on track or could return next week, which is great news for his managers. But if those two are healthy and Kittle's available, then Bourne is sitting there at the 5th option, maybe in the passing game. But if one of those two guys is out, you could see him in that number 2 role with Pearsall or with Jennings. They did sign Demarcus Robinson, I think, to be that 3rd guy while Ayuk is out. But Bourne obviously had the huge game, seems to be a favorite of Mac Jones. He also, I think, vibes pretty well with Purdy, as from all reports. So you could pick him up as sort of and I don't know how pricey he'll be. You could pick him up thinking, okay, one of those two guys might miss next week and I could start Bourne again. And they're, those guys are, if Jennings or Pearsall are in, they're not going to be 100% necessarily either. So Bourne could have another good game.
Yep, I agree. Last tiny bit of note here, and I'm not attempting to start or joining in on the starting of a quarterback controversy in any way. They just paid Purdy. He's not getting benched. But they tried to rush him back last week. It did not go well at all, and so he had to miss this week again. With the way Mac Jones is playing, if you are relying on Brock Purdy as your quarterback, make sure you have a consistent other option because I think they might take their time here. Obviously, if Purdy's good to go, they will bring him back. But there's clearly no need to rush him back with Mac Jones playing like this. So just keep an eye on that situation. Moving forward. All right. We will get into some news, and a lot of it. For some reason, this feels like a gazillion pieces of relevant news. So we'll try to be quick on these. Reminder for the end of the show, if you want to get questions into the chats now, we will hop on those questions at the end of the show, especially if, or primarily if, you've got top-level, season-long, or trade-related interesting questions that aren't just, do I start this guy or this guy? And if you have those questions, go check out John Paulson's rankings on 444.com, and you can get your answer very easily. All right. We'll try to rapid fire this, but some of them will require some analysis because there's a gazillion things here. First things first, when there's a new starting quarterback in the NFL, we have to talk about it. This one may be the least interesting that we'll have all year, but Dylan Gabriel has been named the starter for the Browns. Joe Flacco is getting benched. Not super surprising. In fact, little spoiler bit of inside info here. I have a coworker who's a friend of Dylan Gabriel's and his family, and he told her that this was penciled in from the beginning of the year, that he would probably start here. So they were giving Joe Flacco the early run, but hoped to get Dylan Gabriel going around this time. Does it matter for anything to you? Does it excite you about pass catchers that we've been benching? Are you picking up Dylan Gabriel? Any fallout here that you care about for fantasy?
And I have a tendency to ramble because I'm nuanced and I give everybody my back and forth that goes in my brain sometimes. And, even saying that I ramble, sometimes I'm rambling. So we'll try to go as quickly as possible through everything. Dylan Gabriel, I think this is a change of quarterback situation. It's interesting because the passing game really hasn't been going very well. They've had some tough matchups. Joe Flacco, to this point, has been a productive passer and chucking the ball around and 45 pass attempt type guy and 250, 290 yard passer, but it's not happening this year. I think he's lacking some mobility, and the pressure he's seeing in the pocket is a problem. So I'm hoping that Gabriel can be a little bit more mobile. He's projected for 13 yards rushing in my rookie quarterback model, which is the one stat that the model does a really good job at projecting. The rest are just sort of placeholders for rookies. But he does come in pretty high with a very high completion percentage in college. So he's 8th in my model of 112 rookie quarterbacks that I've looked at, 55th in yards per attempt. So there's some upside here that he could be the quality passer that they need to get people going. But, who are we excited about? Maybe the 2 tight ends, maybe Jerry Jeudy, maybe Isaiah Bond. We don't know exactly who he's going to vibe with, or who, because sometimes these guys come in, they haven't had much experience throwing to the top receiver. So Jerry Jeudy might not do well, and then all of a sudden Isaiah Bond is doing well. So you start to, in some of these deeper leagues, you might be picking some of these guys up, or Bond maybe, but I'm not super positive or optimistic about the passing game, other than the fact that it's a change.
If you are out there listening, wondering who the heck is this Bond, James Bond? No, it's Isaiah Bond that John is talking about. Cedric Tillman is on IR quite suddenly. So Isaiah Bond is the next man up, theoretically. He is a rookie out of Texas, speedster, and that's pretty much all we got. So you can try it. We'll see what happens. He has not done much this year, obviously. Last week, he had 6 targets and caught 3 for 58. So that was not bad. 19.3 yards per reception, which is checks out for the type of receiver he is. So that's one interesting one to watch. There's always that question about like rookie to rookie backup connection. So I'd be curious to see if that happens. Keep eyes on all of that. Okay. Bad news. We have to talk about it. We have to talk about the fallout. Malik Neighbors and Tyreek Hill, the lone bright spots, really, or at least somewhat reliable bright spots of otherwise struggling passing games for most of the year, are out for the year. Tyreek Hill's knee injury was really disastrous. We will see if he comes back to the NFL. He's going to try, is what it sounds like from him and his agent. Malik Neighbors, obviously this one really, really sucks. He was looking incredible. Both of these teams, their offenses, particularly their passing games, have been a little meh, and now they're missing by far their best weapons. What is the fallout for you? Are there guys to pick up, or do the quarterbacks lose any startability? Obviously, Jackson Dart was making his first start when Malik Neighbors got hurt. How do you break this down?
I think it definitely hurts both quarterbacks, and they're a lot less reliable without their top receivers. I think for the Dolphins, Jalen Waddle becomes a likely every week start for you. Kind of going from wide receiver 3-4 value to wide receiver 2 value, in my opinion. He's delivered whenever he's had the requisite number of targets. For example, in the 44 career games with at least 6 targets, which I would think would be his target floor given what's going on in that offense. He's averaged 5.9 catches for 77 yards and a half touchdown per game on 8.5 targets. Those are good numbers. A really good receiving pace there. This is a pretty good matchup with the Panthers. They just gave up 100 yards to Stephon Diggs. I think otherwise we have to kind of wait and see how the Miami offense shakes out. Malik Washington has 10 fantasy points on the year. Nick Westbrook-Ikhine probably sees the biggest bump in snaps. He has popped his head up here and there in his career on the deep ball. So there's some, perhaps something will happen there, but probably for most fantasy managers, it's not really relevant. Darren Waller is kind of intriguing after his initial 2-touchdown game, only playing, a handful of the snaps, and he has already said that his snap count's going to rise. So that was, one concern is like, well, how's he going to do this in 25% of the snaps or whatever? But it's going to rise. And so if he gets to 50, 60% of snaps and is getting targeted pretty heavily when he's on the field, then he can do some damage. And originally when he landed there, I was kind of excited for him in that Jonnu Smith role because he was one of the best receiving tight ends. Waller was when in his prime, and even had 500 yards, I think, for the Giants in his last season there, and kind of abruptly retired. So maybe he's got some game left and might be worthwhile pickup for anybody in tight end hell. As for the Giants, I think the big winner here is Darius Slayton. Wan'Dale Robinson probably has a higher floor. He had a couple of good games to start the year with Russell Wilson. Last 2 weeks have not been very good, but he should, there's a lot of targets now up for grabs with Neighbors out. So Robinson's more of a PPR guy. We'll see how he vibes with Jackson Dart, who doesn't seem like he's going to have the passing floor that Russell Wilson had, but it was his first start, so we'll see. Has more of a rushing floor than a passing floor right now. As for Slayton, he's been playing on 89% of snaps this season. It hasn't seen more than 4 targets in a game, but when he does hit at least 5 targets, and that's 23 games since the 22 season, he's averaged 4.2 catches for 64 yards, 0.22 touchdowns on 6.9 targets. If you can envision him in a 6.9 target role, then he becomes sort of a wide receiver 3 type with kind of a low touchdown expectation, especially with a rookie quarterback and just kind of the passing game in flux. But he's worth picking up. And I think he's, going to be a sneaky start in a week like this against New Orleans. We got 4 teams on bye. And in certain matchups, I don't know that he's going to be an every week start, but we'll have to wait and see.
Whew, lots of stuff. Unfortunate, obviously, but keep your eye to the snap counts and the target shares there. See what happens. A couple guys off IR or offenses that could really use some sparks. So I'm curious if you care about either of these. Tyjae Spears, who has been limited in practice. He's coming off an ankle injury. And Taysom Hill, same thing, off a knee injury. These guys' windows are open. This doesn't mean they're starting right now, but if and when they are back in full, do you have interest in either? Or does it affect other fantasy situations in those teams?
Yeah, I was just going to mention that this is more negative news for players that are startable right now, and Tony Pollard and Juwan Johnson. So I'm concerned about Pollard. He's been okay, but it's been mostly volume based, which we sort of thought would be the case. He would have a good opening run, but there just haven't been touchdowns. I think he's got 1 touchdown in 4 games. You're expecting, a guy who's getting 16 to 20 touches to get, a touchdown every other game at least. But this offense has been pretty dreadful in terms of scoring. And so there hasn't been that scoring upside for him in terms of touchdowns. So, he's been okay from a yards per carry standpoint and all that efficiency. So you wonder, if they get Spears back and he's healthy, and how healthy is he? This was probably a high ankle sprain, right? And these things tend to linger. So are they going to wait till he is like 100% before they really activate him? Or are they going to bring him back just to try to give some punch to the running game, even though he might still feel some soreness in his ankle? Those types of things can reoccur and quickly go sideways. But I have Spears in one league and on my IR spot. He's a stash because he is probably one of the better attrition backs if there is an injury. Although with the offense the way it is, it's not super exciting. Taysom Hill I picked up in Scott Fishbowl. I drafted him and then I picked him back up this week. I saw that his practice window opened and I'm like, all right, he scored 70 in this format in one game last year. I'm going to go ahead and pick him up, and maybe I can run him out there once he gets going. Yeah, he's a weird one because of the different things he does and doesn't do. Doesn't catch a lot of passes, so he's more of a he's more valuable as a tight end in standard formats or in point per first down formats because he runs the ball sometimes. But we'll see what sort of role he has and how quickly he can get going. But he's going to perhaps impact Juwan Johnson, who is one of the top target earners right now in tight end. Although, Taysom Hill's not a big target guy. He might even affect somebody like Henry Miller more negatively as the backup running back, who did see an enhanced role last week. I'm actually starting him in Scott Fish, hoping that he has that same role this week. He might, Taysom Hill might turn into the backup running back behind Alvin Kamara.
I also picked up Taysom Hill in the Scott Fish Bowl, or drafted Taysom Hill, dropped him, and then picked him back up again this week. This is what we do here on the Most Accurate Podcast. Okay. Trey Benson placed on IR and had knee surgery out of basically nowhere. I don't think there was any rumblings of this happening. Obviously, you had James Conner go down. Everybody picked up Trey Benson with a large portion of their fab budget or a very high waiver priority, and then boom, he's on IR. Really unfortunate. What's even more unfortunate is that no one seems to know, although Michael Carter claims to, which of the two potential backup running backs is going to be more useful in fantasy, if one even is. So you have Emari DeMarcado, who was the backup, has been the backup before. And then you have Michael Carter, who was on the practice squad, elevated, and then has been quoted claiming that he will be the starter. So this is very confusing. Can managers who've picked either of these guys up, and both should be picked up, by the way, roll either of them out this week with any confidence? And if so, who would you prefer?
I picked up both players in different leagues. I spent money on DeMarcado, and in that league, Michael Carter got picked up for free. And then in another league, Scott Fish Bowl, I picked up Michael Carter for free before the news about Trey Benson broke. A lot of times RB3s will be picked up in that format due to the size of the roster and just the competition involved. Carter's quote, and I want to just quote this: "It's been a lot. You go from Pat Tillman, Scout Player of the Week in parentheses, 1 week, to starting the next." So I don't know that this necessarily means that he was told that he was a starter or would start. He did. There was reports from beat writers saying that he was first up in the running back pecking order in practice. So there might be something to this, and he might end up leading the team in touches this week, especially because it's a good matchup and they should be in favorable game script if my survivor pool pick is accurate, and against the Titans. They should be able to run the ball as much as they want. The Titans are 31st in adjusted fantasy points, a lot of the running back position. We've seen a lot of Michael Carter. I think he's a good, serviceable backup type guy, real world backup guy. He's a player that can produce in fantasy circles when he's given enough touches. But I would really like to see Emari DeMarcado in a lead role, given what we've seen from him so far. His athletic profile, 4.41 speed, 60 percentile speed score, according to Player Profiler. He's averaging 6 yards per carry on 86 career rushes. And then people come at me and say, well, those are all on third down. No, they're not. He's averaging 4.72 yards per carry on first and second down on like 58 career carries. Oh, no, that sample size is too small. That's a pretty good sample size. As a statistician myself, like, that's not bad. He's graded well as a rusher at PFF. He was 20th out of 139 in 2024. He was 6th in 2023. He was also a good receiver. He's 21st out of 58 qualified backs in 2024. He's being pegged as a third down back, but he weighs 215 pounds, which is more than Michael Carter. So I don't know why the Cardinals would do this, but it does look like they may be poised to do this. I am just trying to speak this into existence. Hope that somebody in the staff is listening. Give him a shot. Give him 15 touches. Let's see what happens.
I am with you on that front. Also, just worth noting, Michael Carter has never been the guy. Even back in college, he split work with Javonte Williams at North Carolina. So I would feel very confident. This is my take on the situation, that we are getting a Washington situation here, which is okay. Michael Carter might start in quotation marks for those who aren't watching on YouTube, which you should do. But he'll basically get the same number of touches as DeMarcado, and if DeMarcado plays better, he may see more work than Carter. And that's even if Carter does get the quote-unquote start. So it feels like a wait-and-see situation, although Tennessee is such a good matchup that if you're desperate, which many people are, you might need to roll one out. Briefly on the Houston side of things, because this doesn't seem like news. I felt like we knew this, but it has come out this week that there is still, and even more confidently so, no signs that Joe Mixon will be returning this season. Very, very strange situation with him and Houston. Let's ignore Joe Mixon for now. Nobody cares. He's on every waiver wire, or should be. But Woody Marks has played his way a little bit past Nick Chubb these first 4 weeks, increased his snap count every week, and has an amazing matchup against the Ravens this week. Are you trying to acquire Woody Marks before this week? And what do you think is his rest of season value in comparison to Chubb?
Yeah, if I needed a 3 or a running back 3, or if I had any issues at running back, I would at least reach out and see what that Woody Marks manager would want. I did tell one of my friends to pick him up, and they were available on his waiver wire. It's a short bench league, and he was available. So happy for that acquisition. Definitely appears that it's happening. You're watching the games, and he just looks like he has more juice in his legs than Nick Chubb does at this stage in his career. And I'm a big Nick Chubb fan. I was rooting for him to have a renaissance here in Houston. He's had a couple of moments, but he's kind of a grinder right now. So I think they're trying to get Marks more involved and give him the lead role with Chubb as the backup. And I think you're looking forward. I don't know how many of guys you're going to have available right now at his probable price, because I don't think people have caught on to what's happening necessarily, with him. So it's worth asking if they want like a wide receiver 3, or, you have 2 tight ends that are pretty good. You could unload one and try to get him with that. But if they're asking for the world, no, it's still the Texans. Their offense is not great. Offensive line's not particularly good. But he does certainly look like he has more upside than Nick Chubb does at this point.
Okay, big. Braylon Allen, it was announced today. He had already been put on IR, I think, yesterday. But today, this being Friday, was announced he's going to be out 2 to 3 months. 8 to 12 weeks was the words, with a knee injury. Isaiah Davis is the third back there, so he now becomes the second back. Do you have any interest in Isaiah Davis, and or is this just a big upgrade, if at all, for Breece Hall? Obviously, Braylon Allen was not playing up to the expectations a lot of people had coming into the year. But what is the fallout here for you?
Once I saw the Braylon Allen news, and I started thinking about Isaiah Davis, I wasn't sure how long Braylon Allen would be out, or what the period, but 8 to 12 weeks. A lot can happen in that span. And then even in week 9, is he ready to come back and do anything productive? If there is something that happens to Breece Hall, or, Breece Hall's traded, there's been some rumors about that. I don't know. I don't think that's going to be the case right now, but we'll see. So I did in my longtime friends and family league, I just picked up Isaiah Davis. I have I have Chase Brown in that league, and I have DeMarcado. It's only one running back you have to start. So I just basically ignore the position and just sort of, just focus on receivers. But I did pick up Isaiah Davis, cut Trey Harris, if that makes any difference. It's a keeper league, and Trey Harris is buried on the depth chart there for the Chargers. So Isaiah Davis has, a career 5.7 yards per carry. He's a South Dakota State Jackrabbit. I believe he went to Baylor for one game or something. But pretty good start to his career, and I think he has now moved into attrition backstash territory, and something could happen there if there is a Hull injury.
Miles Sanders has an ankle injury. It seems likely he will miss this week, which means finally, for those who were excited about the rookie Jaden Blue, which by the way does not include me because I'm a Javonte Williams truther. He should be activated this week for the first time. He has been a healthy scratch all year, but if Miles Sanders misses and Jaden Blue is active, how interested are you in him? Were you one of the fanboys in the offseason, or were you on the Javonte or even the Miles Sanders train?
Well, I mean, congratulations to you if you were a Javonte truther and how that has worked out for you. And I don't mind you mentioning that. You gotta celebrate your wins around here.
Got to.
I thought Jadon Blue was interesting. Drafted him in Scott Fish and cut him once he's just been consistently inactive. Somebody else picked him up, so it's somebody else's problem now. But I thought Javonte Williams, Miles Sanders, and a rookie, an electric type rookie who's has his fans and has his detractors. But you heard the negative news about him just not being like professional at the start, and then so I was like, oh, okay, so this is probably not happening. And then there was some positive reports coming out about him at the end of camp. I think with Sanders dinged up, you're moving Jaden Blue potentially into the RB2 spot there. And then if there is a Javonte, injury or missing any time, I don't think that Jaden Blue is going to work out even a role that Miles Sanders had, which was fairly involved. I don't think that they're ready to give him that type of work because they'll probably just lean on Javonte until they really feel confident in Jaden Blue. But he's now one injury away from perhaps a significant role, so he should be rostered in a lot of leagues.
Worth noting for anybody who kind of 50-50'd it before the season, and like you said, Jaden Blue, much more electric, it seemed, than either of these guys looked to be. But worth noting, Javonte Williams has not just gotten all the work. He has looked quite good. His deeper metrics, quite good. His yards after contact, quite good. He's looked explosive, gotten a little bit more explosive, I would say, as the season's gone on, which makes sense given his injury past and the fact that he's working back. So I would very much believe that he holds his job and would agree with you that Jaden Blue may not even get all the Miles Sanders work. So not freaking out here, but someone to flag just in case he shows out really well once he is finally active. The Commanders running back room. Probably the most confusing and frustrating for fantasy this year for everybody, particularly those who were on the Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt hype train, another train I was not on. TBD whether that train I should have been on it or not. They have said they are very happy with their RBBC, but that Krosky Merritt is the, quote, most capable of becoming an all-around threat, end quote. Do you buy this? Where do you stand on this backfield? Because a lot of people are still holding on to JCM, or Bill, as he likes to be called, hoping that he does take over the backfield, but it has been a very even split through 3 weeks post Austin Eckler.
Yeah, I mean, I think looking back at this right now, hindsight's 2020, but the Commanders had a committee last year with Brian Robinson and Austin Eckler. McNichols even got in on that a little bit last year when there were some injuries. They never really relied on one player. And until they get a elite player like a Saquon Barkley or a Jonathan Taylor or whoever, name your favorite RB1, they were probably going to see this sort of split. And I think Chris Rodriguez, you just look at last week, 7 carries for 59 yards. Krosky Merritt, 7 carries for 47 yards. So coaches are looking at that going, well, Rodriguez ran as well, if not better than JCM. So let's keep him involved in that. He's just not a big pass catcher, Rodriguez. He had no targets last week. JCM did have 2 targets. And then Jerry McNichols is the best pass protector of the 3, although JCM has shown some improvement. I was looking at their pass blocking grades to see if that might play a factor. So, I mean, McNichols got 33% of the snaps last week. So, I mean, with 3 touches. So just that sort of playing time is going to limit the upside of these other guys. And then on top of that, they're splitting the carries. And we have McNichols with a 60-yard touchdown run the previous week. You thought maybe that might earn him some more carries. So I think you kind of previewed this. It's going to be a committee. But JCM's probably worth stashing. You could play him in good matchups because he is the one that has the dual threat ability here that is probably exciting to the team, more exciting than Rodriguez or McNichols.
Worth noting, the happiness with the RBBC kind of makes a lot of sense because on the season, the Commanders running backs are averaging the second most yards per carry out of any running back room in the entire NFL with 5.9, behind only the Ravens, which some of that is Justice Hill, but a lot of that is also Derrick Henry being very efficient, despite the fact they refused to feed him the ball these last few weeks. Please feed him the ball, Ravens. That's all I have to say about that. Okay, moving on. Bucky Irving is out. This was recently announced today. We expected it to be the case, but he is out Sunday with a foot. He's week to week. This is another situation that people are a little, what's the fallout going to be? Is it going to be Rachaad White or is it going to be Sean Tucker? Is it going to be a mix of the two? They have an unbelievably difficult matchup this week against the Seahawks. So what is your take for this week and any stretch of time that Bucky Irving might be out?
Well, I think initially you're looking at Rachaad White. I wrote him up for sneaky starts. However, Sean Tucker and the Sean Tucker truthers out there who are ready for him to have a 8 to 10 touch role, and we've obviously seen what he can do in a part-time role. And I think if you're looking at the situation overall and you're a little worried about Bucky Irving's foot, that this could be a longer-term injury. It sounds like it's a foot sprain. But we don't have a lot of detail on how long he could potentially miss. Suddenly, Sean Tucker becomes more, and even in regular type leagues, becomes more of a priority type stash because of the upside in this offense and the fact that they could give him some work even if White is healthy, and they could, if White is underperforming, Tucker could run away with a lead back role there if it's that bad. White has played well this year, and in 17 games since 2023 without Bucky Irving, he's averaged 19.8 touches, 91 total yards, 0.53 touchdowns. That's about 14 half PPR points per game. I don't know that he's going to get that workload with Tucker available. It might be more like a 16 touch type role, but he should be in that lead back role, and I think he has a nice sneaky start this week.
We in particular, and I think a lot of people remember the Sean Tucker breakout game that was last year. He had a massive game. I think it was like 180, 190 yards and a couple touchdowns. That was with Rachaad White sidelined and just Bucky and Sean Tucker. So now you have Bucky sidelined, just Rachaad White and Sean Tucker. That is the reason for interest here. Let's do some quick hitters. We'll have a bunch of them, but they're important. The Chiefs want to get rookie running back Rashard Smith more involved in the offense. Pass catcher. We are coming off a week in which Isaiah Pacheco scored a receiving touchdown, and so a lot of people are hoping that was a sign of things to come. But if Rashard Smith is on the rise, where are you at with Isaiah Pacheco? How close to drop or must trade is he for you? And then do you want to be adding Rashard Smith in leagues?
Yeah, maybe you could shed some light on it. As to, I'm looking at I didn't watch the Chiefs game. 13 carries for Kareem Hunt for 35 yards.
Yep.
That doesn't sound real efficient. I don't have my calculator handy. Isaiah Pacheco, 7 for 34. That sounds pretty good. That sounds like almost, just my math, like 34 divided by 7, that's almost 5 yards per carry. So maybe he's showing a bit of life. But why is he 6 carries less than Hunt? 14 touches for Hunt, 9 for Pacheco, 7 for Rashard Smith. I think what we would like as fantasy managers is for Isaiah Pacheco to look like the Isaiah Pacheco of old, and then for Rashard Smith to maybe work into the PPR third down back role, and for Kareem Hunt to have a seat on the bench. Perhaps he just hasn't run really, really well in quite some time. So I don't know what's going to happen here. Rashard Smith is somebody that I did put in some waiver bids for. I didn't want to spend a lot, but it is an interesting backfield if he were able to win it outright. But it's not like he ran it great either. 4 carries for 9 yards in this particular game. On the season, Kareem Hunt 36 for 116, Pacheco 32 for 126, and Rashard Smith 7 for 24. So just not great across the board, but Pacheco as a pure runner has been, I think, the best of the three. And we're hoping that he can get kind of back to that. But it does sound like they do want to get Smith involved, and that makes him a stash in this offense.
This does seem like one of those situations you had talked about. I think it was DeMarcado, where he's getting his work on downs wise. Kareem Hunt has been getting the vast majority of work on third down. They've been pretty even on second, and Isaiah Pacheco getting a little more work on first down. So it just seems like probably to some degree they trust Kareem Hunt more in passing situations, and there's been a lot of those. So it's messy there. Very quick hitters. Jalen Coker is eligible to return. There are a lot of Coker fans in the fantasy community. I won't say what they're called. Are you one of them? Do you add him, or is this just a watch?
I did see if he was available in the league. He wasn't. You are getting kind of interested in perhaps adding him. They don't have a whole lot going on there. In the receiving game. You're just sort of looking at it. They've got Tet. Jatavion Sanders is sidelined, so Tommy Tremble's scoring points. Xavier Legette sidelined. Hunter Renfrow had one good game and then has kind of disappeared. Bryson Tremaine is playing a lot of snaps. So there is some potential here if Coker can get going. He had a nice run last year. And, Bryce Young is a decent quarterback. I think we feel better about him than, say, like Cam Ward right now. So Coker, I think, is in deeper formats worth a pickup if you have some wide receiver issues.
Joe Alt, the tackle for the Chargers, has a high ankle sprain. Why do I bring up an offensive lineman injury? Because good heavens, is Justin Herbert's offensive line in trouble. Obviously, he's lost now both his tackles because Rashawn Slater before the year, and then everybody else on the line has not been playing well. Scale of 1 to 10, or maybe just the QB ranking, how concerned are you for Justin Herbert, short term at least?
Yeah, when these start to pile up, it's tough. And if they can't give him some time, then they should be able to adjust their offense a bit and make things quicker and give him some rollouts. And he's pretty mobile, so it shouldn't be a disaster. It's not like he's Joe Flacco back there. But yeah, you want your starting tackles, so it's definitely something to monitor.
Okay, concern, but maybe not freak out concern.
Correct.
Decent concern. Okay, similar situation for the Raiders. Colton Miller, high ankle sprain. Their offensive line was already a disaster. Ashton Jeanty had his breakout game last week, but does this concern you and bring that high back down for Jeanty, given how bad the O-line has been?
Yeah, Jeanty had that good game against the Bears, who are not good against the run. So you're still starting Jeanty probably this week, but the Colts are 10th in adjusted fantasy points allowed to the running back position. So some of these kind of decisions, like I had Kyren Williams ranked ahead of him. You're kind of looking at him versus like Travis Etienne, Alvin Kamara, Cam Scatterbo, and you're sort of wondering, Kenneth Walker, even David Montgomery, you're kind of wondering, you could see all these guys outscoring him if things break their way and things don't break Jeanty's way. But you kind of want to ride that hot hand of Ashton Jeanty after that great game.
Worth noting, he had that 64-yard run. That was obviously a huge part of his production. According to Next Gen Stats, on his other 20 carries in that game, negative 16 rush yards over expectation. So it still is messy when he doesn't get a breakaway run for Jeanty, although the volume was nice. Last thing before we get to, well, and that's not the last thing. There's still a lot of stuff. Good gracious. The A.J. Brown situation. Very frustrated in Philadelphia that he's not getting the frustration sounds like that he's not getting targets, but he's getting targets. So I don't know exactly what he's complaining about. He's had 8 to 10 targets each of the last 3 weeks. He just hasn't caught most of them in 2 of those 3 weeks. He gets a really, really tough matchup this week against probably a whole lot of Patrick Surtain and the Broncos defense. A lot of people are wondering if he's benchable. Where are you at with A.J. Brown? Because this is, I know you don't love the narrative things, but this is very narrative-y. Where do you fall for this week and beyond?
I'm open to narratives. I think the squeaky wheel, I mean, he tends to start complaining, things start to happen, but he, like you mentioned, he had 8 targets against Kansas City, 10 against the Rams. He had 6 for 109 and a touchdown against the Rams. They fell behind though, and that was part of it. And then 2 for 7, 9 targets against the Bucks. Is he still good? I would think so. He's certainly, in his prime or at the, back end of his prime, age-wise and everything. I think things will eventually start happening for him. He's going to have some good games. He's got the Giants next week. The Vikings have played well against the receiver position, but they're not like a team that I would be avoiding as a AJ Brown manager. They got the Giants again in week 8, and then they got a bye to sort of sort things out before they come out against the Packers, Lions, and then Dallas. So I think things will get going. I had one guy hit me up and say, somebody cut AJ Brown. I think Rage cut him. Do I have to put all my fab for him? And I said, yeah, just, he was a second round pick. He's got a 4-game sample here. That's pretty bad on the whole, but he does have one really good game in there. Pick him up. You may not start him every week right now. But I think it's more of a, the Eagles just haven't had to throw a whole lot. And when they are, it's not like he's vibing really well with Jalen Hurts. You got the one good game, and then you've got 7 catches for 34 yards on 17 targets against the Chiefs and the Bucks. Not great. But these two have a long history. They should sort things out, and squeaky wheel does tend to get the grease.
Okay. Chuba Hubbard is going to miss Sunday with a calf injury. The backups there are Rico Dowdle and Trevor Etienne. Do you have any interest in either of those guys against the Dolphins?
Well, I wrote up Rico Dowdle this morning. I made the changes to the projections. I was thinking initially that, if Hubbard were ever to miss time, that Dowdle would be in that like 18 to 24 range. He's coming in a little lower than that because there was a pretty significant split between him and Trevor Etienne last week. It was a 10-7 touch margin. So Dowdle was still ahead of Etienne, and I would assume he's still going to be ahead of Etienne this week, but he has been pretty dreadful as a runner, 3 yards per carry on the dot. The Dolphins are a nice matchup, 110 rushing yards, 4.8 yards per carry to running backs this year. So this is a situation where we have a resistible force against a movable object, and we'll see who wins. I do think that both players could end up producing a decent fantasy line, but if there's only like one touchdown between the two of them, then that player will probably be startable and the other one won't. I'm thinking about 14 touches for Rico. And in a normal week when nobody's on bye, that's probably not startable. But I think, RB3 flex people might be desperate enough. I'm actually considering him versus Trey Tucker in a league. So do you want that touch floor, or do you want the guy who had 3 touchdowns in the 2 weeks ago and then didn't do anything the following week? Etienne is an interesting, I don't know how long Hubbard will be out. Calf injuries can be tricky. So Etienne is an interesting stash as well, given the way that Dowdle's played.
Couple other bits of injury news that need to be monitored because we don't know for sure yet. Deebo Samuel did not practice yesterday. Haven't seen today's report yet with a heel injury. This is with Terry McLaurin and Noah Brown already both out. Jaden Daniels should be back. Do you have, if Deebo is out, or maybe even if he's not, but is coming, dealing with this heel injury, do you have any interest in Jalen Lane or Luke McCaffrey in Washington against the Chargers defense?
I mean, I think Luke McCaffrey has popped his head up here and there and has had a couple of decent fantasy games, caught a touchdown. I don't know if it was 2 consecutive games he had a touchdown, but he did, he was decent against the Packers, if I remember correctly. Mm-hmm. So maybe some interest there. I would assume that Deebo is going to play. We'll see what he does today. I'm looking for info, but nothing yet. He's a vet and they're pretty desperate right now, so he'll try to play. He's a pretty tough player. He'll try to play through it. I thought I saw that Terry McLaurin was at practice, but I don't know if he did anything.
Oh yes, I think this is a weird situation.
Oh, he's out.
Yeah, the beat reporter said he was at practice, but it was like a walkthrough situation, and so it didn't really count, and it was kind of confusing for everybody. But yeah, he's out.
Okay, so I wouldn't have a lot of confidence in anyone really, except for Debo if he plays, and Zach Ertz, and perhaps some Luke McCaffrey, especially in PPR formats. I guess you could run Jalen Lane out there, but man, that's dicey.
I guess maybe the most useful question for those who have him, if Debo is out, is Zach Ertz a must start? Maybe even in a flex spot to give another tight end.
Yeah, maybe with Daniels back, he could. I don't know if he's must start, but definitely more startable than in a typical week.
Okay.
I think he's a low end tight end one. That's sort of his range. And if Debo's out, then you would think you would see double digit targets.
Last thing, woo! Lamar Jackson did not practice, has not been practicing with the hamstring injury that took him very suddenly and confusingly out of last week's game. Cooper Rush came in. He will be the starter, assuming Lamar misses, which it seems like is the case. What's the fallout for you for the skill position players that we would typically be starting with Lamar?
I think as a passer, he can replicate most of what Lamar Jackson does. I mean, obviously Lamar Jackson is a better player because of everything he does. But if you look at just the passing game, I don't think this affects, unless there's some weird like chemistry thing. I don't think it affects Zay Flowers or like Mark Andrews negatively. But definitely change is always, not always dicey for these players, but Zay Flowers has played really well with Lamar Jackson. You do wonder with the quarterback change that will keep up. I would think it would. Mark Andrews has obviously been very up and down. I don't feel confident about really anyone in that offense in the passing offense other than Zay Flowers.
And Derrick Henry, you're starting no matter what, despite his bit of a slump. Okay. All right. Woo! That was a lot of news. I feel like that's the most news we've had in a week on this podcast that I can remember. Let's get into the matchups. Game of the week, I have it tagged as the Lions-Bengals. There were a few decent options here. The main reason I have this tagged as the Lions and the Bengals, besides the very high over-under of 49.5, is that I want to get your take on the Bengals offense. The Lions defense has been pretty tough against running backs, 9th in AFPA, but they're somewhat middle of the road otherwise. But this is less about the defense and more about what is going on in Cincinnati with Jake Browning. Can you trust anyone? And I would typically say, obviously, you have to start Jamar Chase, but can you trust everyone else? I'm not even saying that right now. I want to know, can you trust anyone? And if people continue to struggle, how long do you wait on guys like T. Higgins and Chase Brown before they become benchable? And how long do you wait on a guy like even Jamar Chase before he goes from top 10 because he has to be because you drafted him there to he's a wide receiver 2 or 3 despite how talented he is?
Well, looking at Jake Browning, obviously the last 2 games have not been pretty. He did come in against Jacksonville, 241 yards, 2 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. Last 2 games against Minnesota, 6th in adjusted fantasy points allowed to quarterbacks. Denver, 8th in adjusted fantasy points allowed to quarterbacks. So 2 tough matchups. Came in average like 5 yards per attempt. 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions combined in the 2 games. He's not running the ball particularly well. The reason for optimism would be that he's got a series of better matchups coming up. Detroit's not great. They're 12th. But you can see with Detroit that there might be a lot of pass attempts for Browning. Then he's got Green Bay, which, looked elite and then looked terrible. But they're at Green Bay, so that might be a tough one for the Bengals. And then Pittsburgh, Jets, Bears, bye week, 3 more good matchups, Pittsburgh, New England, Baltimore. So there's reason for optimism if you're, a Chase or Higgins manager. I think you're starting Chase pretty consistently just due to his target level. Higgins is more of a, matchup based at this point. But there is reason for some optimism, and it could start this week just with like a 45 pass attempt type game. The volume might get them there.
Okay. On the other side of the ball, the Cincinnati Bengals are one of the softest teams across the board against every position in AFPA and non-adjusted fantasy points allowed. It's just they are incredibly soft as expected. So you're pretty much starting everyone. That includes Jameson Williams, I would assume, despite his inconsistency.
Yeah, I think he's a sneaky start this week against Cincinnati. Like the Bengals are so bad defensively that you really want to start all of your Lions. It does feel like it's mostly going to be maybe a David Montgomery game out of nowhere, not really out of nowhere, because if they get into a favorable game script in the fourth quarter, you could see him with 10 carries as they keep Gibbs rested and healthy. But to be up by that much, then all these guys are probably going to contribute. Jameson has been like the spottiest thus far after a really good breakout season last year, but I think in this matchup, you probably are going to start him, especially with 4 teams on bye.
The fade of the week is Vikings-Browns in London, a 35.5 point over-under, which is crazy low for the NFL in 2025. So this is not going to be pretty, very likely, or at least Vegas doesn't believe it will be. The Minnesota defense is incredible against the pass. It has been beaten by running backs, but very, very good against the pass. And then the Cleveland defense is just terrifying across the board. So you have to start Justin Jefferson, obviously. Quinshon Judkins seems like a very strong start. So I'd be curious where you have him. But then is anybody else in this game a decent to strong start for you, particularly Jordan Mason against this Browns front?
Yeah, the Browns are first in adjusted fantasy points allowed to running back. So Mason, who's been kind of ranked as a low end RB1, is ranked right now RB20. And I'm looking at the guys below him, and I would certainly consider Rachaad White or J.K. Dobbins over him. Then you get into like the Chase Browns, Tony Pollards. I think I still would start Mason over them. I do have both Montgomery and Kenneth Walker as well, but Woody Marks ahead of Jordan Mason this week due to the matchup against the Browns. Quinshon Judkins has come in really high. Minnesota's 23rd in adjusted fantasy points allowed to the running back position. He's seeing like every touch in that backfield. So I've got him as a low end RB1 at RB9. Justin Jefferson, yes. After that, in terms of pass catchers, it's all sort of based on your, situation and who you might have to start just to get through the week. I mean, Fannin and Njoku maybe, Addison maybe, but again, bad matchup. Hawkinson, it's like none of this really is too appealing, and you certainly don't want to start either of these quarterbacks. So it is a good one to sort of fade if you can.
Also, we didn't talk about it in the news section, but JJ McCarthy's still not coming back. Looks like he's probably at least a week or two away. So keep your eyes on that. It'll be Carson Wentz again. Okay. We will get into some positional matchups, the best and the worst of the week, and then we will get to questions. So much to talk about. On the quarterback front, the good matchups, Justin Fields gets the Cowboys, who are dead last. Now, Justin Fields usually makes most of his fantasy production on the ground, but this is one where he will have chances through the air, you would imagine. CJ Stroud gets the Ravens. He has not been good for fantasy on the whole, but the Ravens have been very good for opponents in fantasy. They're 30th in adjusted fantasy points allowed to the position. And then Bryce Young, who you mentioned has been, okay, better than Cam Ward, but not good for fantasy. He gets the Dolphins, who are 29th. Fields would be a starter anyways, but how high does he get for you? And these other two guys who would be very fringe or non-startable, are you interested in starting them in a pinch?
Yeah, and we are running long. I know people want us to answer some questions, so I'm going to go as quickly as I possibly can through these. Justin Fields, I think, is a must start. I've listed him as a sneaky start, but 32nd adjusted fantasy points allowed to the quarterback position. He's been lights out in 2 games, terrible in the 3rd game, so you have to kind of cross your fingers, but he should in that matchup, he should produce, even if it's terrible. It looks terrible at halftime like last week. Stroud has not been particularly good. Bryce Young has not been particularly good, but they're okay. I would call them like QB2 options this week, given the 4 teams on bye, just matchup based options.
Okay. On the bad side, Trevor Lawrence is facing the Chiefs. I don't even need to ask you. Nobody start Trevor Lawrence this week. He's been bad, and he has a bad matchup. I just wanted to point that out. Much more questionable plays. Bo Nix against the Eagles, who are 3rd, and Daniel Jones against the Raiders, who are 4th. And after 2 weeks, felt like one of the most exciting fantasy plays in the league, then has not done that much since. Are both of these guys very fringy for you? Would you try to get them to the bench and start somebody else?
Yeah, I'm not a big believer yet in the Raiders' pass defense being fourth. I just think that we're just maybe looking at, okay, we'll see on that. I like Daniel Jones at home. I got him as a low end QB1 at QB9. And then I think Knicks is a reasonable start. It's not pretty necessarily at Philly. Third, I'm a little bit more of a believer in their pass defense, but Philly probably will jump out to a lead, and that might, lead at some just garbage time for Bo Nix, or some scrambles, where he can rack up some points on the ground.
All righty, let's go to the running back position. We hit on it briefly. Woody Marks against the Ravens. I forget if you mentioned where you would have him ranked, but against someone like Jordan Mason, are you willing to go that high with him, or is it more like an RB3 who you can get into a flex spot?
I am willing to go that high with him. I've got him at RB19 and Mason at RB20, and that is a decision. But it's the matchup is like you can't get a more matchup based decision, because Baltimore is 32nd this year against running backs, and do we believe that? They're probably not that bad, but they're not good. Mason obviously has Cleveland, so I am looking to start Woody Marks if I have him.
Okay. And then the Saints running backs get the Giants, who are 30th in AFPA. This is primarily a question for how you think this backfield is shaking out. Alvin Kamara and Kendre Miller. Kendre's starting to get a little more work. He's looked pretty good when he gets the ball. Do you have interest in starting both? Is it just a Kamara angle? What's your breakdown?
Well, I definitely don't want to start them both in the same lineup. But I would go ahead and start Kamara, and then if you're in a pinch, Kendre Miller is startable in like a RB4 flex type thing. Like I have to start him in Scott Fish because of what's going on with my roster and all the teams I have on bye. So I'm hoping for a 12 carry, 60-yard, and maybe a touchdown type day from him. But he's not like somebody you're at this point looking to start thinking that he's going to get 15, 17 touches.
All right. On the bad side, there's only one that's kind of worth talking about. It is the Washington backfield against the Chargers, who are 5th in AFPA and are, as we talked about earlier, in a full-blown committee. With the matchup and the committee, are you starting anybody in this backfield if you can help it?
Probably not, but JCM's at 27. So there are scenarios. There's probably scenarios where Chris Rodriguez at 36. I don't think the McNichols thing is going to happen after he rips off a 60-yard run and then gets like 2 carries the next week. I don't think it's going to happen for him in terms of carries. So this does look like it's a JCM, Rodriguez in terms of touches backfield. Those are the 2 guys that you could start, and it is a bad matchup.
All righty, going to wide receivers. On the good side, we talked about Justin Fields earlier. This Cowboys defense dead last in AFPA against wide receivers as well. The Jets have Garrett Wilson, who you're obviously starting. One could imagine he might be top 5 this week. But I'm curious if you have anybody else in that receiving core that you're willing to start.
Probably not. When people aren't producing, you go to the routes to see like who's at least on the field. You got perhaps Josh Reynolds might pop his head up. I have no confidence in that, but maybe in a DFS standpoint, as a minimum player or something. He ran 29 routes, and I think that was his first game back. He's been missing time. Arian Smith at 20. So that does indicate to me that they do look at Josh Reynolds as probably their at least short-term wide receiver 2. Maybe he has a game. Alan Lazard at 20, Arian Smith at 20 routes. Garrett Wilson is my wide receiver 2 this week. I think he will deliver against Dallas.
Wow.
Now, of course, now that I said that, we'll see.
Okay.
But the only other player, and I don't see him listed down in the tight end area, is Mason Taylor, because he's kind of working his way in maybe to the number 2 passing role, or maybe 3 after Breece Hall, depending on game plan. But Taylor could become that second or third option there for Justin Fields.
Okay, I buy that as well. A couple other wide receiver matchups of note. The Chiefs get the Jaguars, who are 28th. And are in an interesting situation with Xavier Worthy coming back. I'd be curious how you break down that room. And then the Chargers trio gets the Washington Commanders, who are 27th in AFPA and are raising all sorts of questions for people. I saw something from an ESPN notification on my phone today that people are starting to drop Ladd McConkey in ESPN leagues. First of all, please don't do that. But second of all, are you willing to start all of them here? And what is your take on how this room will shake out rest of season? Because people obviously want to know.
Okay, so starting with the Chiefs, with Worthy back, I think he's like they immediately started feeding him. He's in my top 10 this week in this matchup. He's up there in terms of snap or routes, 32 out of 44 last week, and I think that probably grows. Juju Smith-Schuster is sort of kind of I don't know, kind of a sneaky guy. 37 snaps out of the slot, mostly, and then Marquise Brown rounds out their three receiver sets for the most part, 26 routes. Tyquan Thornton is now reserved to like wide receiver 4 duties. I think he caught a touchdown. But I just cut him for Isaiah Bond. I don't know. I don't think it's going to happen with Rashee Rice coming back as well. Like I don't think there's going to be enough snaps for Tyquan Thornton to be reliable. He had 17 routes last week. So I think, from a value standpoint, it's Worthy, Marquise Brown, and then Juju and kind of PPR right now. And then Rice comes back and gobbles up Juju. And we have Worthy, Brown, or Rice, Worthy, Brown, probably in that order, or Worthy, Rice, Brown in that order. So that's where I think that's headed. Chargers, they're all startable against Washington, who's 27th just fantasy points allowed at the receiver position. Quentin Johnston is ranked the highest. Keenan Allen is ranked second at wide receiver 20. I think Quentin Johnston is a must start right now, given how hot he's playing. And then Ladd McConkey is okay. Who else do you have to start? And maybe you can bench him and wait for him to get it going. Rest of season, I don't know. Like, does McConkey outscore Keenan Allen rest of season? Does he outscore Quentin Johnston rest of season based on the 4-game sample we have? No. Based on the 17-game sample from last year, he should. I wouldn't advocate cutting him. I would just stash and hope that maybe a Keenan Allen gets dinged up or they start to get him going because he was obviously awesome last year.
I will note for people with confusion over the situation, Ladd McConkey has run the most routes on the team. He's getting targeted at a high rate, not quite as much as the others, but still very high. And he's the only one who hasn't scored a touchdown yet. Now, both other guys they have a skill set that is good for scoring touchdowns. So it's not like just super fluky, but it's a little fluky that he has not scored. Also, his catch rate over expectation is very low. It's in the negatives, and it was very good last year. So I think a lot of this is going to turn around for Ladd. Do not drop him, but maybe don't start him. On the bad side, Cortland Sutton and Troy Franklin, who has popped his head up a few times now for the Broncos, get the Eagles, who are first in AFPA. You're starting Sutton, I assume, because he's been the lead guy mostly and has been quite good. But curious about Franklin. The Jaguars and this Brian Thomas Jr., Travis Hunter disaster get the Chiefs, who are fourth in AFPA. Curious if you're willing to start either of them at this point. And then the Eagles wideouts, we talked about A.J. Brown earlier, get the Broncos, Patrick Surtain and co. They're sixth in AFPA. How are you feeling about these three duos, basically?
Yeah, Sutton's played well. He's at my wide receiver 15. I've got Franklin at wide receiver 38. So he is more of a situational based. It is the worst matchup right in terms of receivers. The Eagles are right now. So not a team I'm looking to start. I have to start Marvin Mims in one league just because I have to, and I have nobody else on my bench, and I don't really want to cut him. So that's sort of when you're starting your Franklins and your Marvin Mims, I think, this week. Brian Thomas, I'm not scared of. He did show some signs of life last week. The Chiefs are a bad matchup. I'm not expecting a big game out of him. I've got him at wide receiver 23, but I think that's reasonable, starting quality. I've got him right there with Ladd McConkey, Jamison Williams. I mean, you're getting into these disappointing guys that have a history of producing, and you're hoping that they maybe pop their head up and get things sorted out. And then you mentioned Travis Hunter. I'm not looking to start. I've got him at 46. Maybe in a PPR, you hope he gets 5 for 50 and get you 10 points, but just not seeing enough snaps right now and not a great matchup. Eagles, I mean, AJ Brown, Patrick Surtain, Devonta Smith might have some more success, just avoiding Surtain. But how well do the Eagles run, and do they jump out to a lead? Because that just seems to dictate the rest of the game and how many pass attempts they're going to have.
All righty. Whew. It is messy. Last thing, the tight ends, and then we'll get to questions. We can be pretty quick on these. Dalton Kincaid gets the Patriots. They're 27th. He's a must start given how he's played and that matchup. Jake Ferguson gets the Jets. They are 26th. He, I believe, would also be a must start, despite the fact he wasn't drafted to be that, given how he has played and the matchup. And then if you're desperate or streaming, the Commanders are 31st in AFPA against tight ends. We talked about their pass defense. Oronde Gadsden is the second, because there was a first, has been a little bit of a breakout tight end for the Chargers. You said you're willing to start all three wideouts. Are you also willing to potentially start him in a streaming situation?
Yes, I did bench him for Jake Tongas. Connor and I did, which worked out to 20 points. So I wasn't sure about that, but I figured with the 49ers injuries that he would have to have a game. Gadsden I have at 21. Not feeling like super confident in him, but startable as a streamer in a pinch, or maybe in a, where you're starting two tight ends. Perhaps they do, like, they're saying the right things about him. Like, well, we're going to get him more involved. We got more good games to come, blah, blah, blah. So it does sound like they do want to get him involved. Kincaid, Ferguson are both must starts for sure.
Okay. Last thing here on the matchups. Hunter Henry gets the Bills. This is the bad side, obviously. The Bills are second in AFPA against tight ends, but he has been very, very good. Basically the top pass catcher for New England. And Evan Ingram, who has not been very, very good, gets the Eagles, who are fourth. I assume he's a sit, but is Hunter Henry on the fringe for you? And is Evan Ingram near drop territory for you?
You're an Ingram. You have a lot of investment in Ingram, right? I hate to say this to you. I just out on him right now until we see some significant production from him in this offense specifically. Hunter Henry, I've got him at tight end 5. I think this is a game too that the Patriots might have to throw the ball more than they would like, and he's been so good. Even if it's a bad matchup, he might have a bad game, and you're going to have to live with some bad games from your starting tight ends because it's kind of a weird position. But I would start him over Laporta, Kincaid, but I would start Ferguson, Warren, Bowers, and McBride over him this week.
All righty, let's get to some Q&A. Reminder: if you drop the start sit question in the chat, that can be answered by looking at John's rankings on the site. We probably won't answer it, but we will strongly encourage you to go check out the rankings on the site and answer it for yourself by looking to see who is higher on the list. Toby says, morning, gents. Morning, Toby. Both Mark Andrews and Theo Johnson were dropped. Drop either Tyler Algier or Brian Robinson for one of them. Other RBs are CMC, Jacobs, Judkins, and Charbonnet. I would drop Brian Robinson.
I think the question is, who's your tight end right now? And do you need one of these guys?
Mm-hmm.
So Toby, if you're there, what's your tight end situation? Or is this your second tight end? I don't know. I think in a vacuum, if you have a tight end that you're starting, holding on to Algier, Brian Robinson they're both lottery tickets. If there's an injury to Bijan or McCaffrey, and right now we have certainly with Bijan, we feel he's been fairly durable, still young. McCaffrey, we just have what would it be called? Irrational confidence in his health right now. Is that fair?
Maybe.
Is it rational to think that he is going to last the rest of the season just because
it's risky.
He's healthy right now.
He is, but he's also getting a gazillion touches.
Yeah, I think Algier has more weekly value. Robinson probably has more contingent value because of the situation with McCaffrey. So that's just something to keep in mind. But I'm not, if these are backup options, I wouldn't cut either of these running backs.
I would agree. If this is for your tight end too, it's these lottery tickets are far more valuable. If it's for a starting tight end this week, I would probably drop Brian Robinson for Mark Andrews. Hope no one picks up Brian Robinson, then try to get him back later to hold that lottery ticket. Samuel Burke says, how high in your rest of the season and weekly rankings do you see Chris Godwin climbing? I love this question because a lot of people, I think, need to know. PPR format, is he worth holding on to when Matthew Golden is available? Ooh.
Probably, given what Golden has not done. thus far. I mean, he's getting a little bit more involved. You'd hope that he would have a big splash game by now, especially in that Dallas game. But it was Romeo Dobbs where got the 2 touchdowns and had the monster game. I do have some optimism about Golden rest of season, but I would probably feel better about Chris Godwin just given the fact that he came out and had like 10 targets last week, played a lot of snaps. Mike Evans is on the shelf right now, so they need him. And Ibuka has sort of stolen his lunch money, but had to because Godwin was on the shelf. But if you remember last year, Godwin, like wide receiver 2 overall, like the overall wide receiver 2 when he got injured. I think he probably has more upside in that offense than maybe Golden in Green Bay.
Yeah, this is a bit of a convoluted situation because 10 targets is amazing in his first game back, but his production was awful. I think it should have been expected coming off the injury and the double surgeries in the offseason. I think it's going to take him time to ramp up. By the time he ramps up, Evans will be back, and he might be the wide receiver 3, but it's a good offense. So a lot of convolution, which I don't think is a word, but feels like it's fitting here. But I would agree with John on this one. Perry W. asks, should I trade Cortland Sutton for Quinshawn Judkins? And then says, 5 people watching, hit that like button. Fair. This is a big yes from me.
Oh, we do have by the way, we have 444 people watching right now. Now it just switched to 445 on all platforms.
Somebody leave.
I should have done a screenshot. I don't know. I think it depends if you need a running back and you want to roll the dice that Judkins doesn't get suspended, you could do this. I think value wise, you're looking at like a wide receiver 2 and a running back, low end running back 1, high end running back 2. So I think there is some if Judkins plays rest of season, I think you are making a good trade. But I think there is this feeling like he is the hammer's gonna come down and he is gonna miss some time, and it's whether it's gonna be 6 games suspension, which would really knock out a lot of this value. So how risky do you want to be? I don't know.
Yeah. This might depend a little bit on your RB depth. If you have guys you think you could stream, from what I've seen, the most likely suspension length is 3 games, then I would make this trade because Quinshawn Judkins is a massive, massive upside player as long as he's in there. I don't know how to say this because it ends in an H, but Pizzi? I have Josh. Okay, well, the whole roster is there, but let's look at the trade first. Do I trade Jordan Addison and Javonte Williams for A.J. Brown and George Kittle? Josh Allen, Achane, Kyron, Javonte, Chase Brown are the running backs. Nico, Cortland Sutton, Tet McMillan, and Jordan Addison at wide receiver. So you're giving up your wide receiver 4 or 5 plus Javonte Williams, who's been very good, for A.J. Brown and George Kittle.
One thing I wanted to note is that if those watching, I'm dipping off the camera, and I think it probably looks like I'm doing a line of cocaine or something because I come back and my nose is red. I have a cold and my nose is running, so I'm trying to, keep that off camera.
This isn't a Jalen Coker thing.
How funny that looks because I reach over and I'm leaning down. Which would be pretty funny if I was just a fantasy analyst that's high on cocaine on a Friday morning. All right, so Jordan Addison is like buried on your depth chart here, right? Wide receiver 4. Javonte is probably getting some run for you as your running back 3 right now. He's got more value than Chase Brown. AJ Brown is kind of a mystery box right now, rest of the season. What are we going to get out of him? And then I'm assuming you have an issue at tight end, which is why you're trying to get Kittle right now as he's about to come back, which I think is a smart move. I don't mind it if you're like, because you are replacing Addison with AJ Brown, and then you're going to turn your RB3 into your tight end 1, and you do have Chase Brown there. I don't mind it.
Yeah, this feels like a major buy low opportunity, and AJ Brown should get enough better and Kittle will return that you end up getting value out of this more likely than not. It's a little risky, but I think it's a good trade. I would do it. Samuel Burks says, I am 1-3 and loaded at RB in a PPR league. Barkley, Hampton, Judkins, Gentry, and DeMarcado. That is quite loaded. Which one of those could be traded to upgrade my wide receiver group and which wide receiver could be targeted, maybe. So most tradable of these running backs for you, John.
I would probably try to move Judkins for the aforementioned looming suspension reason and see if the recipient is even thinking about it, because it's one of these things that's flying under the radar unless you're watching or watching the situation. And we get maybe we have like irrational confidence in Christian McCaffrey's durability. We might have irrational confidence in Judkins' availability in week 10, just because nothing has happened on it yet. So I probably, right now he's pretty hot. Maybe move him. I've got him. People probably are like, why do you have him at RB22? Well, I just explained. It's his availability. I don't know what it's going to be. So there's, I'd rather have a J.K. Dobbins or a Chase Brown right now, or an Alvin Kamara or Breece Hall. So who could you perhaps target? I think you can get a wide receiver too for him. You might be able to get, you probably will be able to get A.J. Brown or Brian Thomas because they're struggling. But maybe you could get like a Quentin Johnston, Cortland Sutton, Zay Flowers, maybe a Igbuka, and maybe a Devontae Adams, maybe a Rome Odunze. I'd be worth looking into it.
Yeah,
I might be able to get like Rashee Rice.
True. I think you could definitely get the higher end of that list that you just laid out with Judkins right now. So if you can do that, the higher end of that list, like an Odunze, I would definitely go that route. If you cannot, because everyone in your league is smart on Judkins and the potential suspension, I will say a thing, and then John can weigh in if he thinks I'm stupid for saying it. I am all aboard selling Saquon Barkley right now because, and I've been saying this since the offseason, he is majorly regressed. We knew this was going to happen. It always happens for guys coming off the year that he had with the touches and the efficiency. He's down at like RB12, which is obviously totally fine, but everybody assumes he will still be top 5 this year. I think everybody assumes that. And he's still been like good, and he scored 3 touchdowns, but his efficiency has been much worse. The explosive plays are not there. I don't think he gets back into the top 5. I think he will be a low-end RB1 rest of year. So if you can sell him at a top 5 price and get an incredible wide receiver, I would be willing to do that. Am I stupid, John?
Yeah, no. I've got him at RB8, so I'm not like sold that he's going to get back into the RB top 5 right now. It also seems like their running game just in general is not quite as good as it was last year. So, and then Jalen Hurts is scoring a lot of touchdowns again. Well, he did last year, but he's scoring a lot of touchdowns. So I don't hate the idea. I just think that the time is nigh. Is that the right phrase to trade Judkins? Because I'm worried about the suspension. But if you're not worried about it and you want to roll with this, but my fear is that you trade Barkley. You now have a good receiver. You have Hampton and Judkins and Genty as your starters, and then Judkins is now out for 6 weeks. Genty's been up and down, and you're like, Mario DiMercato is my RB2. That would be my fear. Another guy you could maybe look for, Judkins for Drake London.
Ooh, I like that. Okay, solid. Frizzle says, as a Juwan manager, should I look to pick up Harold Fannin, Mason, that's Mason Taylor, I assume, or Brenton Strange? I think this question came in during the Taysom Hill convo. All 3 are on waivers currently.
I think Juwan is still the top guy of this list. I have Fannin just because he's kind of a rookie and exciting kind of guy at 17, but Strange is at 19 and has more of maybe a consistent role. Mason Taylor is down at 25 right now. I need to see some more production before he gets up into this group. These are your tight end 2s that you feel like, okay, let's hope for a touchdown, but they are involved or they're running routes. Maybe Dylan Gabriel has a affection for Fannin or something like that. If you have a spot, I don't think it's a bad idea to pick up somebody in case Juwan's role decreases, because I do wonder if he's going to be able to keep up this 90% plus snap rate that he's seen.
Yeah, I would 100% agree. You're not dropping Jawan Johnson for any of these guys, but if you have an extra spot and can pick up, when you have tight ends like this that are more on the fringe, I like to have two if you can, especially with someone like Fannin and or Strange and Mason Taylor to a lower degree who could break out big over the rest of the season. And now you have someone who's even better than Jawan and can trade one or drop Jawan if he's lost his luster. Last question. We got through this okay. JR's smile. No, it's not the last question because I saw a trade one coming after this. Second to last question. JR smile says, pick up Michael Carter and drop Tyler Algier.
We also have a $7 super chat rolling in, so we have
Good
to answer
heavens.
that.
Okay.
Algier or Carter. So with that, see, I just want to say this, and I don't know what year it's going to happen. One of these years, Bijan Robinson's going to have an injury that he's going to miss a stretch of time late in the year, and Tyler Algier is going to win your league for you.
Yep.
So I hate to tell people, or of course he could take the RB1 job and immediately get hurt like Trey Benson did and not win it. But I hate to tell people to cut Algier because you pick him up for a specific reason. He does offer some flex upside or startability, but he's one of the top attrition backs in the league, and he's going to be a league winner 1 year. I don't know if it's 2025. I can't tell you that. I can't predict injuries. Bijan has been pretty durable. Probably won't be this year, but who knows? Michael Carter, I would like to see him and how he plays. And that's also sort of a short-term, long-term issue for you. If it's you need touches now or you need upside now, you might want to make this move because you might have a guy who's getting 15 to 17 touches a game in the next 4 weeks, 6 weeks with Trey Benson on the shelf. You might not. You might end up with the RB2 behind Amari DiMercato. So you're now giving up your lottery ticket for that. So it's sort of about whether or not you want short-term help or if you're looking for somebody rest of season, because I feel like it's really tough to hand over that lottery ticket to the waiver wire in the form of Tyler Algier.
I'm not going to this. I wouldn't call this disagreeing, but I have a very strong take here. So I will say I would not consider this even for a second. To me, Tyler Algier has had 10, 16, one in a weird blowout, and then 16 carries. So except for the weird 30-0 game, he's had 10, 16, and 16 carries. I think that is optimistic hope for Michael Carter. And then there's the Bijan Robinson injury opportunity. So I would absolutely keep Algier here, even if you're 0-4 and need a starting running back. Just put Algier in the lineup. Is my take on that.
You've convinced me. Keep okay. Algier.
Nailed it. Super brief. Just name your answer before we get to this super chat question and close out the show. Evan Gittleman says, "Would you trade Travis Hunter for Calvin Ridley? Both have been bad." Very true on the last part of that.
Well, I have Calvin Ridley at wide receiver 50, and I have Travis Hunter at wide receiver 51. I would go with Ridley, who we think is good. Still, okay. We know that Travis Hunter is going to be good, but he's just not playing enough snaps. Ridley's at least out there; he's getting some targets. Maybe they turn it around.
Okay, I agree. All right, super chat question. Thank you to the Unbox Man for this question. You would not have gotten this answered if it wasn't a super chat because we are late. But big question. 3-1. So there's 2 leagues here. 3-1. Question number 1, what do I do with Zay Flowers? Question number 2, Broncos or Chiefs defense this week? You start Zay Flowers.
And then he's saying Chuba out, Los Rico, start Henry Miller or Sean Tucker.
Yes, in a different league.
Tucker ahead of Henry Miller.
Okay.
I can't forget that big game he had. Maybe they get him involved here. Zay Flowers, you start him. There's no problem with Zay Flowers. Feel confident. We have a solid backup quarterback coming in who can deliver the ball. On defense, Broncos or Chiefs. I'm going
Broncos against the Eagles. Chiefs against the Jets.
Jacksonville's been weirdly good against defenses. They're 4th in adjusted fantasy points allowed to fantasy defenses. But I got them a little higher. I think that the chances of a Trevor Lawrence meltdown are probably higher. than a Jalen Hurts meltdown. Both games on the road. So I would go with the Chiefs.
I would majorly agree there. I feel like the Jaguars' AFPA to defenses is one of those maybe mirages on the AFPA front because they just don't look good. So I feel like the shoe has to drop here. Okay. Wow-wee. What a show. Lots of stuff. Thank you to everybody in the chat for your questions. Thank you to John. Exciting week 5 on the horizon. Tell everybody where they can find important stuff, and then we will sign off.
Sneaky starts went up yesterday. This is actually it went up Wednesday. No, yeah, Wednesday. This is these short weeks. This is when the sneaky starts coming super handy. Grab a guy like Kendrick Bourne. He goes in, scores 24 points for you, 47 in Scott Fishbowl, like he did for me. Yeah, so that's my main thing. And here every Friday with you. On Thursdays, doing a podcast with Addison, a Sneaky Starts centric podcast, and just to keep an eye on the projections over the weekend.
Sweet. And wake up on Sunday morning for the London game, because I would say set your lineups on Saturday, but then Jaylen Warren might suddenly be out on Sunday morning and you'll get screwed. So set an alarm, wake up for the London game, then go back to sleep if you want, or watch the game, because actually don't watch the game. It's going to be awful. All righty, we will sign off there. Thank you to everybody. See you next week.